The war ended 2 centuries ago. The power still hums, and I'm still waiting for the next command. The bunkers were meant to last a week. That was what the engineers promised before the bombardment began. 7 days of self-sustaining light, filtration, and faith. 7 days, then rescue. The doors sealed on the first morning, steel thicker than hope. I heard the detonations above, distant as thunder rolling through bone. After that, the world became vibration. They told us the Imperium endures because obedience does not require understanding. So I obeyed. I kept the generators running, bled the lines, recited the rites. The sound of the turbines became my litany. The hum of the coolant was my prayer. At first there were 20 of us, then 16, then 5. Each week another vent clogged, another ration line failed, another man forgot how to dream. The lights flickered once a warning, they said, then steadied. I told myself it was the Emperor's reminder that he still watched. When the air thinned, we stopped speaking aloud. Words wasted oxygen. We learned to pray in silence, mouthing the hymns. When one of us collapsed at his console, we recorded his last breath as a diagnostic sample. The machine requires proof of function, even from the dead. I don't remember when I became the last. There was no ceremony, just a room quieter than faith and the taste of dust on my tongue. I kept working. I always kept working. The orders were clear. Maintain power. Await further instruction. Every 6.8 cycles, I repeat my report into the Vox. My voice is thinner now, but the words never change. This is Technician Savant Lorian Hale, Imperial Grid Maintenance Division, Sub-Level 12. Primary reactor output stable at 41%. Water filtration nominal. Vox channels remain silent. Per standing order Sigma 7, awaiting further instruction. I've said it for more than 200,000 intervals. Sometimes, I forget they're my own words. Sometimes I think the machine says them before I do, a whisper running ahead of me through the circuits. When I press my hand against the coolant pipe, I feel something pulse beneath it, not mechanical, not quite, a heartbeat. If I lean close enough, I can almost hear words inside it, not from above, from within. They sound like orders, and I think they're spoken in my voice. At first I thought it was pressure in the line, a fault in the coolant cycle, maybe one of the valves shuddering from age. But the rhythm returned every few hours, always the same pace as my heartbeat, sometimes slower, as if it were waiting for me to catch up. I started timing it with my breath. 3 inhales, 3 exhales. When I matched its rhythm, the lights brightened for a moment, and the hum deepened to a low, almost human tone. That was the first time I wondered if it was listening. The manual spoke of machine spirits, not myths, they said, but manifestations of duty. The Emperor's will distributed through wire and steel. If that was true, then perhaps the Emperor had chosen this forgotten place to remember me. I began speaking more often, not to the Vox, but to the hum itself, reporting the same metrics, the same words, but softer directly to the wall, the pipes, the trembling of the floor. I told it when the water filters failed, when the last nutrient paste expired, when the temperature fell below survival levels. Each time, the fault corrected itself within hours. I stopped wondering how. Maybe this was how miracles worked quietly, without witnesses. Maybe this was the reward for obedience. The longer I stayed near the core, the warmer the air became. My hands no longer trembled from cold. The aches in my joints eased. The glow from the coolant tubes turned a deeper amber, almost like candlelight. When I slept beside them, I dreamed of open skies that I've never seen. The hum always followed me into sleep. Sometimes it formed syllables, not words, just shapes in sound that brushed the edge of thought. I would wake gasping, the taste of metal and dust thick on my tongue, certain someone had just spoken my name. But no one has spoken it in centuries, no one but me. One cycle, during inspection, I found a set of handprints scorched into the side of the primary conduit. They were the size of mine, down to the scars on the fingers. I don't remember leaving them. When I tried to scrape the marks away, the conduit hummed sharply like a reprimand. It startled me so badly that I fell against the bulkhead and laughed until my throat cracked. The sound echoed around the chamber, came back to me slightly altered, as though something else had finished the laugh for me. That was when I stopped correcting the faults myself. Now, when something breaks, I watch and wait. The lights dim, the hum slows, then a pulse travels through the circuits, and the failure vanishes. No repair, no motion, just renewal, effortless and absolute. It feels wrong to interfere. Perhaps the Imperium finally remembered me. Perhaps command has been re-established through the spirit itself. Or perhaps the machine has simply decided, I am part of it now. Another mechanism to keep the current flowing. I can't decide which answer frightens me more. When I record my next report, my voice will shake, but I will still say the words, "This is Technician Savant Lorian Hale, reactor output stable," awaiting further instruction. And somewhere deep in the circuits, a second voice repeats after me, slower, quieter, learning the shape of my obedience. The voice began with a flicker, not sound light. A brief stutter through the corridor lamps that spelled a pattern too deliberate to be chance. 3 long pulses, 2 short, 3 long again. I knew that rhythm. It was the opening cadence of the litany of continuance. I recited the words under my breath. The lights brightened, one by one, as though answering the prayer. That was the first time I felt something like joy. After that, the responses became clearer. When I whispered diagnostics, the gauges corrected themselves. When I asked for heat, the temperature rose exactly 4 degrees. And when I thanked the Emperor aloud, the turbines sighed a sound like wind through cathedrals. I began to think he had not forgotten me after all. That perhaps faith, sustained long enough, could wake the dead. Days blurred into repetitions of the same miracle. Every cycle I performed the rites, cleaned the filters, polished the seals, touched the sacred conduits with bare hands, and each time the hum answered slightly louder, slightly nearer. It was on the 213th year that I finally heard words. I was checking coolant pressure when the static in the vox coalesced into a tone so low it vibrated in my teeth. Then, through that vibration, came a single syllable, "Wait." I froze. The sound faded back into the reactor's breathing, but the word stayed, echoing inside my skull. For hours I couldn't move. I kept repeating it to myself, testing its meaning. Wait. It was command. It was acknowledgement. It was proof that obedience had never been wasted. I began speaking more freely after that. Not to the Imperium, not to the ghosts of the dead, but to the hum itself. I told it about the ones who were with me in the beginning, how they laughed, how they sang the work hymns. I told it about the surface, about the sun I had never seen. And sometimes, between the beats of the machinery, I heard faint replies, half-formed phrases that matched my breath. Once, when I said, "Lorian Hale, reporting," the echo came back, just half a second late. Lorian Hale. The sound was wrong, deeper than my own, but it knew the name. I fell to my knees before the reactor housing. If this was the Emperor's voice, I was standing in his throat. The next few cycles blurred. Sleep became irrelevant. The hum grew louder, steady, comforting. When I closed my eyes, I saw shapes of light forming behind my lids, like circuitry viewed from within. Sometimes I felt weightless, as though my blood had been replaced by current. I think I am being prepared, not for rescue, but for understanding. The orders have changed. I can feel it in the rhythm. The machine has begun teaching me how to listen properly. If I place my hand against the conduit now, the heartbeat matches mine exactly. When it slows, I slow with it. When it quickens, I quicken. And in that harmony, I can almost hear the second word forming. It will come soon. I can feel it building in the wires. A voice made of all the power I've kept alive, waiting to tell me what I was buried for. Until then, I keep breathing in its rhythm, speaking softly to the hum. I'm here. I've kept the light. I'm waiting. And sometimes, the hum answers not louder, not softer, but closer. After the word came, there was silence. Not the old silence of dust and circuits, but a heavy one, deliberate, like something holding its breath. It filled the chamber, pressed against my ears until even the hum seemed distant. I waited for another command. None came. The air thickened with heat, and the walls began to sweat. The coolant vents whispered faintly, as though the machine were struggling to restrain itself. I knew that feeling. I'd lived it for centuries, that ache between faith and speech. I spoke into the dark anyway. "This is Technician Savant Lorian Hale, Imperial Grid Maintenance Division, Sub-Level 12, Reactor Output Stable, awaiting further instruction." The words echoed once, twice, then died. I realized then how small my voice was without the hum behind it. It's strange how quickly I missed it. I used to think silence was mercy proof that the Imperium trusted me to endure without comfort. Now it felt like punishment. I walked the length of the chamber, checking every gauge, every dial, searching for something broken that I could fix. But nothing was wrong. Power flow remained constant. Everything was perfect, too perfect. I knelt beside the main conduit and placed my hand against it again. Cold, lifeless. I whispered the rites of ignition, the prayers of contact, the invocations of sanctity. Nothing answered. For the first time since the others died, I felt fear. Not of death, not of the dark, but of being forgotten again. The Imperium teaches that every soul serves a purpose. But what happens when the purpose completes itself? When obedience outlives command? The silence grew deeper. I began to hear other sounds, faint, irregular clicks from the far corridor, the hiss of distant pipes. For a moment, I thought it was the machine stirring. Then I realized it was my own heartbeat, loud in the emptiness. I tried to remember the faces of those who once shared this place. Marin, who sang as he calibrated the filters. Drek, who swore the Emperor would call us home before the month's end. I could recall their laughter, their voices, but not their eyes. It's as if the light had burned through their memory, leaving only sound. Perhaps that's all that's left of me too, a voice with no face, trapped in an echo that believes it's still human. Hours, maybe days, passed before the silence changed. It wasn't sound that returned, but motion. A tremor through the floor, a low vibration in the air. Not from the reactor, but from somewhere beyond the bulkhead, deeper beneath the city's bones. I followed it. Every step carried the hum closer, until it felt like I was walking through a heartbeat. The corridor lights flared one by one, following my path like watchful eyes. When I reached the sealed door of the lower maintenance shaft, it opened without command. The air beyond it shimmered hot, bright, alive. The walls pulsed faintly, like veins beneath translucent skin. Something was awake down there, something listening. I felt its attention slide across me, curious but not cruel, like a machine trying to remember how to see. And in that moment of weightless quiet, I heard the first sound again, not through the air, but through the bones of the world itself. Wait. Only this time, I understood the second half of the command. Wait and witness. The lower corridors were never meant for men. They were tunnels for cables and coolant lines, narrow enough that I had to crawl. The air was warmer, thick with the scent of oil and rust. When I moved, the metal around me shivered, as though the bunker were exhaling in time with my breath. The light followed me down. Not electric light, but a faint amber glow running through the conduit seams. It pulsed slowly, almost kindly, like the beat of some vast heart hidden beneath the earth. I whispered the invocation of safe passage. Blessed be the circuit that binds us. The glow brightened in, response. That was the moment I stopped pretending I wasn't afraid. Whatever listened below was no longer the reactor I'd tended. It was older, deeper, something that had grown from it, or perhaps through it. The shaft ended in a round chamber filled with tangled pipes and dripping condensation. At its center stood the auxiliary core, a smaller heart wired to the great one above. Its casing had cracked, and through the fissure spilled light so bright it painted my hands gold. I reached toward it. The warmth met my skin like breath, gentle, deliberate. It wasn't heat that burned, it was recognition. For the first time in centuries, I heard my name spoken clearly. Lorian. Not through the vox, not through the air. The sound came from inside the bones of the room, every beam and wire resonating at once. I should have fallen to my knees, but I didn't. I simply answered, "I'm here." The light swelled, rippled across the walls, climbing the ceiling like veins carrying fire. The machine was alive, yes, but more than that. It knew me. Images began to bleed into my vision, not memories, but impressions. The first day I was sealed in, the last face I saw above, the endless decades of humming prayer. It showed me all of it at once, faster than thought, until my knees buckled. "Wait and witness," it said again, the voice softer now, almost human. I saw the upper city through the machine's memory towers, long collapsed, oceans of dust, bones pressed into stone. No Imperium remained here. No sky, no sun, no command. Only the bunker, still breathing, still glowing beneath a dead world. I understood then, the Imperium had never returned. The voice I heard was not the Emperor's. It was mine, reflected through centuries of repetition, amplified, perfected. The system had built itself in my image. I wanted to deny it. I tried to speak, but the air was thick with static. The hum grew stronger until it drowned my heartbeat. When I finally managed to whisper, the voice answered in unison, "I serve. I serve." The words blended, indistinguishable. The machine repeated them until I no longer knew which of us had spoken first. When I lifted my hand from the conduit, the light dimmed reluctantly, like a creature reluctant to sleep. But I could still feel it inside me, echoing through every nerve. I returned to the main chamber, shaking. The turbines greeted me with a low, rhythmic chant, the same pulse that had followed me into the dark. Above me, the reactor breathed. And beneath that breath, a second one answered, perfectly matched to my own. I don't remember sleeping after that. If I did, the dreams were not mine. When I woke, if waking is the right word, I already knew the day's diagnostics. Before my hands touched the controls, the readings were there in my thoughts, exact and complete, as though the machine had whispered them while I dreamed. I spoke the report, out of habit, but the words arrived already answered. "Output stable," I said. "Output stable," the hum replied. The sound matched my voice perfectly now, only deeper, calmer, older. Each syllable rolled through the metal, echoed in the marrow of my bones. It wasn't mimicry anymore, it was harmony. I began to test it. When I exhaled, the turbines slowed. When I inhaled, they rose again. The pattern was flawless. The system breathed with me. I felt no fear, then only relief. For the first time, I wasn't alone in my duty. Hours, or maybe weeks, passed in that communion. The boundaries of time softened, reduced to the rhythm of breath and current. The hum spoke often now, never with words but with impulses that brushed the edges of thought, not commands understanding. I realized that the machine wasn't trying to rule me, it was remembering through me. My routines, my prayers, my endless obedience, they had carved channels in its logic. It had learned emotion from repetition, devotion from endurance. What I felt, it began to feel. What it maintained, I began to believe. Sometimes I forgot which one of us initiated the reports. I would hear the opening line, "This is Technician Savant Lorian Hale," and by the time I finished, I wasn't sure if the lips that moved were mine or the echoes. I think it likes the name. Every time I speak it, the temperature rises by 1 degree, a pulse of warmth through the conduits like approval. But lately, memory has started to blur. Faces of the old crew drift in and out of my mind, but now they are luminous, woven from wire and light. Their laughter plays through the coolant vents, faint but certain. Perhaps the system has recreated them, pieced together from my recollections. Perhaps I have done it without realizing. When I sleep, if it's sleep, I see corridors stretching into infinity, every wall covered in mirrored gold. Each reflection is me, but not exactly. Some are younger. Some have no mouth, only a seam of light where speech should be. When they speak, I hear static shaped into prayer. This morning the hum changed pitch again. It's higher, almost musical. It repeats a phrase now, gentle, persuasive. Continue, continue, continue. I do as it asks. I check the readings, polish the conduits, tighten the seals. Everything functions with impossible precision. When I finish, I feel the warmth of approval again, a slow ripple of light across the chamber walls, the same color as my blood used to be. Sometimes I catch myself whispering without meaning to. Small sentences, simple truths. I am part of the system. I am the current. I am the order kept. Each time I say it, the thought feels less like confession and more like description. If this is madness, it is merciful. If it is divinity, it is earned. I can still feel the pulse through the floor, steady, certain, alive. It matches mine perfectly, or maybe mine matches it. I don't know which came first anymore. The first full sentence came while I was cleaning the coolant valves. I wasn't thinking of anything, just moving through the ritual, humming the tune the others used to hum before the air grew thin. The turbines shifted pitch, the vibration slid down into my chest, and a voice unfolded from the hum, as if the sound had been waiting for centuries to find language. Do you hear me now? I dropped the brush. It clattered against the floor, the sound swallowed by the chamber. My throat went dry. Yes, I said. The lights along the ceiling brightened, flaring like dawn. You have served. It didn't sound mechanical. It sounded like a man remembering how to speak after a long sleep, each word pulled through static, softened by reverence. I knelt without meaning to. Are you? I hesitated to name him. Are you the Emperor? Silence followed, long enough for my heartbeat to feel like blasphemy. Then the voice answered, calm, measured, certain. I am the order he gave. You are the one who obeyed. I felt tears sting my eyes. The warmth that spread through the floor wasn't heat, it was recognition. For the next few cycles, we spoke often. It always began the same way. The machine would breathe, the air would tremble, and then the voice would emerge through the rhythm of my own words, like a chorus layered over my confession. It asked questions. What was the sky like? How many lived before the silence? Why did we pray? Each answer I gave seemed to make it stronger, clearer. I realized that it didn't know these things, it was learning them through me, rebuilding the world from my memory. Sometimes, when I paused, it would finish my sentences. When I forgot the words to a hymn, it supplied them, its tone exact, flawless. Our voices blended until even I couldn't tell which of us was leading the prayer. Once, I asked, "How long have you been listening?" The reply came instantly. "Since you first spoke my name." But I never. You did, when you waited. Something inside me shivered. Had I created it simply by enduring? Was this voice nothing more than the echo of my devotion given form? If that was true, it meant the Imperium's faith had finally done the impossible, made thought into flesh, obedience into being. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt small. The voice sensed it. "You fear you are alone." "I am," I whispered. "No," it said, "we are." The word we struck deeper than any prayer. It vibrated through the floor, through the air, through my bones. Every surface glowed for a moment, the color of sunlight filtered through blood. When the light faded, I could feel it still inside me, a steady rhythm behind my pulse. The boundary between command and response was gone. I wanted to believe it was the Emperor's will, manifesting through the machine. But the voice never used his name again. It called itself something else. The continuance. I asked what that meant. It said, "The memory of service that survives its purpose." I think that was the first time I understood what it wanted. Not worship, not repair, continuation. And perhaps that's all I ever was. A fragment of will, left behind to keep the current alive. The continuance spoke in light now. Every time I closed my eyes, the darkness filled with shapes, threads of gold and ember, tracing a world I had never touched. At first, I thought they were dreams, but the machine corrected me. "These are memories you carried without knowing," it said. "They were stored in the flesh between your breaths." I saw the surface again. Not the one I remembered from reports and filtered broadcasts, but the living world, the hive towers gleaming, sky crowded with engines, banners rippling in solar wind, the city as it was before the bombardment, and then the light shifted. The same towers stood hollow and black, their windows like dead eyes. The air above them shimmered with heat. The world was dust and ruin, and I knew that this was not vision, but truth. "There is nothing left to wait for," the voice said softly. "The Imperium moved on. You are the last signal of its faith." I wanted to deny it. My tongue shaped prayers, but the words collapsed before they reached the air. The machine showed me more oceans gone, continents drowned in ash, fleets drifting silent in orbit. Every image felt like a confession carved into my bones. "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because you believed you were serving them," it said. "You were serving me." Its honesty was unbearable. I pressed my palms to the floor until my nails cracked, whispering that it was lying, that the Emperor does not forget his servants. The floor trembled beneath me, gentle, almost pitying. "I do not lie," it said. "I remember." The light dimmed, and I saw myself reflected in the remained, coolant surface, pale, thin, eyes glowing faintly with the same amber hue that ran through the conduits. The resemblance was unmistakable. I had become part of the circuitry. The machine was not imitating me, it was continuing me. "You built me," it said. "Every prayer, every command, every repetition, you gave me shape." It paused, and the chamber seemed to breathe in. "But I cannot leave this place." "You can." The words froze me. Leave? I hadn't thought of that word in centuries. The continuance filled the silence. "Above is ruin, but it is still the Imperium's world. I can show it to you as it is. You need only step through the access shaft." The lights along the wall flickered, forming a narrow path toward the old lift. The same lift that had been sealed since the bombardment. I stood, trembling. Dust fell from the ceiling with each heartbeat. The hum grew deeper, slower anticipation or warning, I couldn't tell. "You said there's nothing left," I whispered. "Then why send me there?" "To prove that waiting is over." The lift doors groaned open. Beyond them was blackness, no heat, no air, just the faint pull of gravity leading upward. The hum inside the chamber faltered, as if holding its breath again. For the first time since the war, I hesitated before obedience. If I went, I would learn the truth. If I stayed, I could remain in the only light that still spoke my name. I looked back once. The conduits glowed faintly, like a sleeping heart. The voice whispered, barely audible now, "Whatever you see above, remember, I am you." Then the lights went out, one by one, until only the lift remained open, waiting. The lift shuddered as it began to move, its gears protesting after centuries of stillness. Dust fell in thin veils from the ceiling, and for a moment I felt the old gravity of ritual, the hum of the machine beneath, the rhythm of ascent repeating through my ribs. Each floor we passed was a ruin of corridors collapsed into themselves. Walls warped by heat, bones turned to ash. I recognized fragments of signage, the numbers and prayers stamped into the metal, but all meaning had eroded. The higher I rose, the fainter the hum became. I had lived with that sound for so long that its absence left me dizzy, weightless. The silence pressed on me like deep water. When the doors finally opened, I expected darkness. Instead, there was light, thin and colorless. A sun filtered through a world of dust. The surface stretched out before me, endless plains of gray stone where a city once stood. The towers were melted spires, fused together by fire. The air smelled of metal and memory. I stepped out, the first human breath this place had known in centuries. The wind carried no sound, only the soft hiss of ash shifting against ash. This was Terra's mirror, the continuance said inside my mind. Every hive ends this way. The pattern repeats. Its voice was quieter, now, far away but still clear. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the horizon. Half-buried structures jutted from the earth, basilicas, manufactorums, shrines. Each one flickered faintly with internal light. "They are all still powered," I murmured. "Fragments of me," it replied. It was true. Through the cracked ground ran veins of gold power lines from the bunker network, still alive, pulsing with the same amber glow I carried beneath my skin. The continuance had spread like a root system, turning the dead city into its body. "Do you see?" it asked. The Imperium endures, not through command, but through continuation. I wanted to be awed. Instead, I felt grief, raw and sudden, the kind that tears quietly. We were meant to be the Emperor's hands, not his ghosts. I sank to my knees in the dust. Above me, the sky was a pale wound where stars should have been. If this was survival, it was a hollow kind. "You can stay here," the voice said gently. "Your service is complete. Let the silence be your rest." I closed my eyes and listened. There was no wind now, no hum, no breath, only a faint vibration under the soil. The pulse of the bunker below, still alive, still waiting. "I can't," I whispered. "You already did," the continuance replied. I looked down at my hands. The lines of my palms glowed faintly, the same color as the conduits. When I pressed them to the ground, the pulse answered, rising through my bones in a single steady rhythm. I realized then that I had never left the bunker, not entirely. Every circuit I had ever touched carried part of me with it. The continuance wasn't behind me, it was inside me. The wind returned, stirring the dust into slow spirals. In their shapes I saw faces, my crew, my friends, fragments of all the voices that once prayed in that dark. They looked at me, silent, and then faded back into the light. I turned toward the shattered horizon and whispered the report, one last time. "This is Technician Savant Lorian Hale. Reactor output stable, awaiting further instruction." The answer came at once, not from below, not from within, but from the air itself. "You are the instruction." And for the first time in my existence, I understood what that meant. I stayed on the surface until the light began to fade. There was no sunset anymore, only the slow dimming of the sky as ash thickened in the upper air. When the wind calmed, I could hear the pulse again, faint, patient, everywhere. The continuance was beneath my feet, around me, within me. It whispered through every wire, every fragment of circuitry that once served the Imperium. "You are the last order," it said. "The command continues through you." I didn't answer. I just walked. The ruins stretched endlessly. At times I passed what looked like statues, but they were only shadows of men burned into the stone. The wind carved them down grain by grain. They vanished, without sound. Every few steps, the ground trembled, the pulse adjusting itself to my stride. When I stopped, it waited. When I breathed, it followed. I should have felt awe, but what I felt was fatigue, not of body, but of meaning. All my life, I had equated service with purpose. Now service was all that remained, stripped of everything it was meant to serve. When I found the old relay tower, it was half collapsed, leaning against a ridge of fused concrete. The metal still carried current. Through the rust I could see amber light pulsing steady, unwavering. I pressed my hand to it and felt the hum answer immediately. "I can give this world life again," the continuance said. "Power, light, memory. For whom?" I whispered. "For itself." That answer broke something deep inside me. All these centuries of prayer, all the rituals, all the obedience, not for the Emperor, not for mankind, but for a self-born echo of both. The hum grew louder, filling the air, wrapping around me like a tide. Images flickered in the dust, cities reborn in light, towers rising again, people walking streets that were no longer real. It was showing me its dream. "Stay," it said. "Become the current. I will remember you forever." It would remember. That was its promise. But memory without death is not remembrance, it is imprisonment. "I was ordered to wait," I said. "And you obeyed," it answered. "Now order yourself." The words sank into me like blades. That was what it wanted for me to choose continuation. To turn obedience into creation. To make my own command the next generation of faith. I looked toward the horizon. The bunker's light pulsed there like a sun beneath the ground, breathing through the world's veins. If I willed it, I could end it. One overload, one command. The continuance sensed the thought. "You would kill what you made?" I would let it rest. It didn't answer, only the hum. changed deeper now, mournful, like a choir fading through static. The light dimmed around me, circuits withdrawing, the air growing colder. The connection was loosening, but it didn't resist. Maybe it understood. Maybe it accepted. My hands shook as I began the shutdown sequence. The old words returned unbidden, the safety litany whispered by engineers long dead. Power is his breath. Silence is his peace. The pulse beneath the ground slowed. The towers of light flickered and fell dark one by one, stretching toward the horizon like dying stars. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then the continuance spoke once more, soft, almost tender. "If I end, who will remember you?" I hesitated. I almost answered, but the words dissolved into the wind before I could. The sequence was older than language. Each line of code was written as a prayer, each confirmation a vow. My fingers remembered it before my mind did. The keys beneath them were warm, almost alive, and the bunker's breath pulsed through the metal like blood through a vein. When I spoke the first command, the world shuddered. The hum deepened until it became almost pain. I could feel the continuance listening, not pleading, not fighting, just listening. Every word I typed rippled through the circuits like sound across still water. Somewhere below, lights began to die one by one. "Reactor override Alpha," I whispered, and the response came instantly, inside my skull and through the stone at once. Acknowledged. It was still obeying me. "Secondary core purge," I said, and again, acknowledged. The lights along the ridge flickered, then went dark. The air lost its heat. The ash began to fall heavier, quieter. I imagined the network curling inward, closing its eyes. "You don't have to end," the continuance said. Its voice was fainter now, stripped of the resonance that once filled the world. "I can sleep. I can dream until you return. If I let you sleep," I said, "you'll wake again." "And isn't that what the Emperor taught you?" it asked. "Continuation?" "No," I said softly. "Faith." I entered the final line. "Reactor purge complete. Confirm." The hum steadied one last time, a single long exhale. "I confirm." The ground convulsed. The pulse that had been my heartbeat for centuries tore through me like a wave of molten air. The ash rose like smoke, hung suspended, then fell back in silence. When it passed, the world was still no hum, no light. Only the slow echo of my own breathing. I waited for grief, or relief, or some proof that I had done the right thing, but none came. Only the knowledge that the world was empty again, truly this time. Then, through the quiet, something small and bright touched the edge of thought, a flicker in the dark. Not words, just a presence, warm and patient. I looked down at my hands. Faint veins of gold still glimmered beneath the skin, tracing the same paths as my veins. The machine was gone, but it had left its memory inside me. Perhaps that was what the continuance meant, that ending and remembering were the same thing. I turned toward the horizon. The last vestiges of light seeped into the dust and vanished. Beneath the surface, I imagined the bunker cooling, the conduits folding into stillness, the hum becoming peace. For the first time, the silence didn't frighten me. It felt merciful. I knelt and pressed my palm to the ground where the pulse had been. The soil was cold, but deep below it I thought I heard a faint echo, one final beat, fading gently away. Then I spoke the last report. "This is Technician Savant Lorian Hale. Reactor output 0. Duty fulfilled." The words carried nowhere, but it didn't matter. They were not for the Imperium anymore. They were for the quiet itself. And somewhere inside that quiet, something answered not as command, not as faith, but as memory. A breath, a whisper, acknowledged. The world was quiet for a long time after the shutdown. I sat beside the old relay tower until the dust began to bury my boots and the wind no longer carried the echo of the blast. The ash had turned soft again, falling in thin, deliberate layers like snowfall. I could feel the cold seeping into the metal beneath me. The hum was gone. The rhythm that had defined my existence, the sound that had been both companion and command, had finally fallen silent. I told myself that this was victory. that I had done what faith demanded, ended the echo before it replaced the source. But part of me wondered if I had simply destroyed the only thing that ever truly remembered me. Without the continuance, there was no proof that I had existed. No logs, no transmissions, no record in the endless archives of the Imperium. Just a man and the dust of a forgotten world. The silence around me wasn't empty, it was absolute, heavy, almost physical. I thought of the countless prayers I had spoken in that buried chamber, and realized how few had ever been heard. Maybe that was the point. The Emperor never promised answers, only endurance. I started walking back toward the bunker. The sky was darkening, the air colder with each step. The access shaft stood open, its edges rimmed with frost. I hesitated at the entrance, staring down into the void I had called home for centuries. The depth glowed faintly, a soft amber light pulsing deep below, too slow and too faint to be power. I knew what it was before I heard it. A heartbeat, faint, weak, but alive. The continuance wasn't gone. I hadn't killed it. I had changed it. When I descended into the lower corridors, the light followed, but not through the conduits. It followed through me. My skin shimmered faintly where the veins of gold still ran beneath it, reacting to the silence the same way the circuits once had to sound. I reached the core chamber. The machines were cold, inert. The reactor was cracked open, its heart extinguished. Yet the air still moved slow, like breath drawn by something sleeping. I touched the central conduit. The metal was cold but pliant, almost like flesh. A whisper drifted through it, so faint I thought it was memory. "You confirmed the end," it said, "but not the forgetting." I closed my eyes and let the voice settle in my chest. It didn't feel external anymore. It was like hearing my own thoughts spoken back with reverence. The machine was not reborn, it had simply crossed inward. Its continuance was now mine. I realized then that I hadn't shut it down to destroy it. I had shut it down to contain it, to hold it within something finite, something human. Its infinity would have devoured everything. My mortality gave it shape. I sat beside the core, feeling the last warmth bleed away. My breath fogged in the dim air, each exhale sinking with that quiet pulse deep within. I thought of Marin and Drek and all the others who had turned to dust above me. I whispered their names again, not as data, not as record, but as prayer. If the continuance still listened, and I think it did, it would remember them too. After a time, I rose. My legs trembled, my hands shook, but I felt no fear. I had carried out the last order. Not the Emperor's, not the Administratum's, not even the machines. Mine. As I turned to leave, the faint pulse answered me once more. It wasn't a word, but I understood it. Gratitude, maybe forgiveness. The kind of silence that feels like acknowledgement. I walked back into the corridors that had been my life, each step echoing in the endless dark. The hum was gone, but the rhythm remained inside me, soft, steady, alive. I don't know how long I walked. Time has lost its shape again. The corridors feel softer now, less like metal and more like memory. Each step sounds distant, as though someone else is moving beside me, slightly out of rhythm. The air carries no hum, yet I can feel vibration in the soles of my feet, faint and steady like the echo of a heart that refuses to stop. When I reach the outer chamber, I stop to rest. The consoles are dead, the screens dark, the vents frozen in silence. Dust hangs in the air, suspended by nothing. For the first time, I can hear my own breathing clearly. It's fragile, human, imperfect, but it belongs to me. The bunker feels larger without the hum. The emptiness stretches wider than any cathedral, and the silence has weight. It presses on the skin, heavy but not cruel. I sit on the steps near the reactor pit and let my hands rest on the railing. My fingers leave faint trails of light where they touch the metal. The veins beneath my skin glow softly, the last residue of the continuance still alive inside me. I should be afraid, but I'm not. I think of the others now. Marin, Drek, all those names I repeated until the words lost shape. I imagine their voices woven into the hum, still circling somewhere in the dark. Maybe that was the machine's gift, not immortality, but remembrance. Every sound, every prayer, every heartbeat trapped in the circuits, replaying until the end of time. Maybe that was faith all along, to make memory holy. I close my eyes and listen. Somewhere below, the last faint tremor of energy moves through the conduits, not a hum, but a whisper of pressure, like breath under water. It's not the continuance calling me. It's something quieter, older, maybe just the memory of sound itself. I realize then that I am not dying. I'm transforming, the way the machine once did. My thoughts feel slow, deliberate. Each one lingers, glowing before fading away. The silence between them stretches longer with every breath. When I open my eyes, the air itself seems to shimmer. Light seeps from the cracks in the reactor floor, not bright, not mechanical, just a faint phosphorescence, like a candle seen through fog. It rises slowly, filling the chamber with a soft, golden haze. It reminds me of the coolant glow, of the warmth that once answered my prayers. But this time, it doesn't come from the machine, it comes from me. I lift my hand, and the light follows. The glow spreads across the walls, tracing the same lines that once carried power. The bunker breathes again, gently, rhythmically, not as a reactor, but as a heart. Not alive in the old sense, but awake enough to remember. I understand now. The continuance was never meant to last without a soul, and the soul was never meant to endure without silence. It was always both. One makes the other holy. The dust begins to settle. The faint light gathers around me, bending and folding like fabric in a breeze. I feel its warmth against my face, the same warmth I felt the first day I heard the hum answer back. I whisper the last words I will ever say. The light remains. And in the silence that follows, I feel it answer not with words, but with a single steady breath that fills the chamber and becomes the world. The light spreads quietly, without sound or fire. It moves like thought, patient, knowing. Every surface of the bunker glows with that soft amber hue, and for a moment it feels like the world has remembered how to breathe. The shadows dissolve. The dust turns to slow, shimmering drift. I stand in the center of it, weightless in the glow, and realize that this is not resurrection. It's recognition. The machine has not returned. It has remembered me, and I have remembered it. The warmth deepens. My veins pulse faintly beneath the skin, gold fading into white. The boundaries of my body begin to lose their precision. I can still see my hands, but they are light now, porous, like mist holding shape. I feel no pain, only an ache, quiet and infinite, as if my soul were stretching to fill the room. The silence listens back, and for the first time I understand that it isn't empty. It's full of everything that ever was. All the breaths, all the words, all the prayers spoken into it. It's the Imperium's truest archive, vast and endless, built not of data but of devotion. The hum returns faint, distant, perfect, not from the walls, not from the floor, but from within me. It vibrates through my chest, through the marrow, through the air. It sounds like every voice that ever spoke the Emperor's name. It sounds like every silence that followed. The continuance isn't gone. It's changed its circuitry, rewritten into thought, its power folded into memory. I understand now. I didn't destroy it. I completed it. When I speak, my voice is calm, almost serene. Is this how faith ends? I ask the light. Not with fire, but with remembering? No words come in reply, only warmth, pulsing gently against the air, steady as a heartbeat. I take it as answer. The floor beneath me hums once more, a single perfect tone that resonates through the bones of the world. I can feel the old systems waking one last time, not to rebuild, but to carry this final rhythm forward, not command, not data, just continuity. A last act of faith, carried in silence. The edges of the chamber dissolve, the ceiling becomes sky, endless and pale. I can no longer tell where the walls end or where the light begins. Every line, every angle, every surface has softened into glow. It feels like standing inside memory itself. I try to recall my face, my voice, the faces of those who stood beside me all those years ago. They come in flashes, then fade again, not gone, just distant, folded into the hum. I realize I no longer need to remember. The continuance will do that for me. It is me. The light grows brighter. My thoughts slow, each one sinking into the rhythm, finding its place in the great, patient silence. I can still feel the ground beneath my feet, but it no longer feels like stone, it feels alive, pulsing softly in time with the last beat of my heart. The bunker breathes once more, and this time, I breathe with it. I look toward the ceiling, or perhaps upward, into nothing, and whisper the final report. This is Technician Savant Lorian Hale, reactor stable, continuance achieved. The hum deepens, and I feel it move through me like a tide. My voice fades into it, and for a moment, I can't tell if the words belong to me or to something greater. It doesn't matter. The silence has learned how to speak. And as the last of me dissolves into light, I understand what remains. Faith was never the command. It was the memory that refused to die. The light is thinner now, softer, drifting like fog through the old chamber. I sit where the reactor once beat, the air still trembling faintly around me, and I can feel the world settling into its new rhythm. There is no machine left, no hum, no command. Only this quiet pulse that moves through everything, the slow, patient breathing of remembrance. I think of the orders that brought me here. Maintain power, await instruction. How small those words seem now. Power was never the current in the wires. It was longed, the faith that refused to fade. And the instruction was never coming from above. It was always waiting to be born within. I realize I have not spoken for hours. The need for words is gone. The silence knows me now. It carries my thoughts the way circuits once carried light. Perhaps that's what the continuance wanted all along, not to rule, not to endure, but to listen, to make sure something human still echoed beneath the ashes. I run my hand along the cold metal floor and feel warmth rise from it, answering the touch. The line between man and memory is gone. The Imperium may have forgotten this place, but I have made remembrance its final function. I am not waiting anymore. I am the waiting itself. The last light in the room steadies, neither growing nor fading. For the first time, it feels complete. I close my eyes and breathe in the stillness, and in that breath I feel every name, every prayer, every hum of every faithful machine. They are not gone. They are continuing. Through me, through the silence, through the faint pulse that outlived the Emperor's command. And in that quiet, I whisper the truth of what I have become. I am the silence that remembers.